Index of Industrial Production, or IIP, is an important indicator of growth, but has been a nightmare for economists and often the target of jokes. Here's why. Let me pick one or two rogue items. First, digestive enzymes. This has a weight of just 0.22 in the index, but look at its growth. In the year 2015, the item has shown, over 1,000% levels of growth in practically every month. And although its weight is just 0.22, its contribution to IIP has often gone to between 1 and 2.5% in some months. Let me take closer to time, not 2015. If you take 2022, an item, rubber insulated cables, is showing growth at 53 and 35%. Of course, the saving grace is it has not moved the IIP much because it has very little weight. But the question continues to arise, how can year-on-year output swing so much as 35 and 53% in the case of cables and 1,000% in the case of digestive enzymes? Is the sample too small? Is the collection not regular? Well, to understand what are the problems with the IIP, what are the problems of resolving them, and what are the solutions, I have with me Dr. Gurucharan Manna, Senior Advisor at NCAER and formerly Director at the CSO, now NSO, National Statistical Organization. Dr. Sudipto, Mundle, Chairman, Center for Development Studies, and someone who has chaired a commission on real sector data. And my third guest, fellow journalist, Pramit Bhattacharya, who recently wrote an interesting item on IIP in the newspaper Mint. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Dr. Manna, let me start with you first. Just tell us why this volatile movement in items like enzymes and cables. Is it that you all are not tracking enough number of companies, or is it that all the factories don't give you data regularly? Why this volatility?
Okay, good afternoon. Yes. Let me just thank at the beginning CNBC channel for inviting some of us. As regards, I will not take much time. As regards your queries regarding how item level so much of growth rates can occur, probably you are all aware that you see when the item basket is finalized, first of all we pick up very top few important items in terms of their share in overall output within the NIC classification. It could be at 3-digit level, basically. And once the item is finalized based on the ASI data of base year, in this case 2011-12, then for a given item included in the basket, what we do, basically as per ASI 11-12 data, the factories which produced that item in that base year, they were first arranged, sample factories in the descending order of output, and only top few factories for a given item get included in the basket. That becomes the panel. Okay. Now, the examples you have cited, in certain cases, rubber insulated cables, etc. Yes, we have seen a lot of volatility in the index. One primary reason could be, as per my view, that we don't have sufficient number of factories in the panel for not only for rubber insulated cable, it may happen with many other items. Since only small number of factories are reporting the production data, output data in a month-to-month basis, we are taking that as the total output of the selected factories in the current month, and we take the production relative as compared to the total contribution by those sample units in the base year. And that multiplied by weight, weighting, as per the weighting diagram, and we add it over the items, that gives the index. Okay. So, to be very specific, probably this type of volatility at the item level for certain items, particularly those with having significant weights in the weighting diagram, they could sometimes behave abnormally because of, I think, issue of representativeness of the item in terms of the number of factories included in the basket. So that is probably is creating the volatility.
I will come back to the issue of data collection in just a minute. But Dr. Mundle, I wanted to ask you, why is it that IIP doesn't seem to move in sync with other indicators? Lately, we have seen a fairly decent rise in PMI manufacturing. I agree PMI is more like a yes-no data, whereas IIP measures actual volume of output. But nevertheless, exports did very well in the years 2021. we have seen several GST data, for instance. Many of them seem to show growth, whereas the IIP remains understating growth. Do you observe such an inconsistency? Do you agree with my point?
Yes, Lata, you're absolutely right that the IIP has been out of sync with many other indicators, whether you call it high frequency indicators or, other indicators. And the reason, I think, is mainly because of the sample that you have. And I should say, by the way, that Dr. Manna is my go-to person. I need to know something about these things. So I have very little to add to the problems that he has already highlighted. That if you have, very few observations in a sample of a particular kind, and as you just gave that example, that even though it is relatively low weight, you have some incredibly high growth rate in one observation, and that tilts the whole sample. So for a long time, actually, many of us, we don't really take the IIP very seriously.
There you are.
It's something that has needed a revamp for a long, long time. It's not being done, unfortunately, by the statistical authorities. So basically, it's now, as far as I'm concerned, a lost source of information in putting together our statistical picture of what's going on in the system.
Pramit, you're more on my side. So if you can raise any other red flags with respect to IIP as an index.
Yeah, so the data issues Dr. Manna has already highlighted. But the thing is that these are not new issues. These have been highlighted for the past 20 years. And starting from the Rangarajan Commission in 2001, reiterated in the Committee on Financial Sector Assessment from the Government of India and RBI in 2007-2009. Then you had an audit report from the National Statistical Commission in 2011. Then you had a standing committee asking former RBI statistician to investigate in 2012. Then you had another round of revisions and the Soumitra Chaudhary committee report in 2014. And then finally, Dr. Mundle headed that Real Sector Statistics Committee in 2018. So it is not just about the data collection itself, it is also about the statistical system's responsiveness to that feedback. And as Dr. Mundle also pointed out, that many people have stopped taking IIP seriously. But that feedback also, I think CSO and the Statistics Ministry has not taken very seriously, which is why we don't see enough of remedial measures, enough of validation, enough of coordination with other source agencies to improve this, or at least to prepare a document saying that this is the path for improvement. Maybe it will take 5 years, maybe it will take 10 years. So we don't see that. And the weakening of the National Statistical Commission, I think, contributes to this problem.
Oh, yes.
Since that 2011 IIP audit, we haven't had a single audit of any other statistical product. And in many cases, we don't know to the extent we know about IIP that these are the problems.
But Dr. Manna, is there a problem in terms of, the people who are collecting? I think the data is getting collected at the state level. Is it that all the columns are not getting filled? That even if there are, say, 5 factories which give digestive enzymes, or 10 factories that make insulated cables, but only one is reporting in a certain month, do you have any control over the number of entries that are getting included?
Let me react to this query very quickly. As you are aware, the index number, when we release for the first time after a gap of 6 weeks, you see, the response rate for some of the items we have seen is not very, very good. The major problem, as I have repeated, it is not due to poor quality of data. I think one needs to look at seriously with the number of observations, that is number of factories reporting that item. In my view, that could one of the major reasons contributing to this kind of problem.
But Dr. Manna, the question I was asking Dr. Mundle, the fact that IIP seems to indicate slower growth than other concurrent data. In fact, Neelkanth Mishra put out a report showing for over 10 years the IIP systematically showing industrial growth. I mean, if you only culled the industrial items from GDP, GVA that is, and you looked at it, then IIP is consistently 2 percentage points lower in terms of the industrial growth it indicates. That is something which is a long-standing problem according to that report. Would you agree it's not in sync with other data?
I to some extent agree, definitely. Okay. It is a perennial problem we have observed that IIP-based growth rate does not match with why we talk about the national account statistics-based growth rate, where of course a lot of data sources are accessed and all. Even if we compare with the ASI growth rate, annual survey of industry, ideally IIP growth rate and ASI growth rate should be very close to each other. That has not happened. And if you look at the time series data for say about 12-13 years, for most of the years, as you were rightly mentioning, you see the ASI-based growth rate is on the higher side, but not for all the years. Not for all the years, let me repeat. Come to the next 5 years, you see ASI latest data is available for 2019-20. So if we start from say ASI 15-16 and look at the 5-year growth rate data based on IIP vis-a-vis ASI, I find that in 3 years, you see, ASI-based growth rate is higher than IIP-based growth rate. On the other hand, in the remaining 2 years, it is the other way around. IIP gives higher growth rate. But the main issue remains. Main issue is that there is a mismatch in the growth rates between the two data sources and of course with the national account statistics based growth rate. I think this is a very serious problem in my view, and we are seized with the problem. Many people in the system are aware about it, and we need to take remedial measures. How this mismatch or the kind of divergence with the data source, other data sources can be minimized.
Okay. Well, that is going to be my next set of questions. I have to take a commercial break, but I am going to ask all three of you whether more modern sources like the GST data can be used. We are back in a minute. What's wrong with the IIP index? That's the question we are asking. Three experts. I have been speaking with Dr. Gurucharan Manna, who is now a senior advisor at the NCAER, but is a former Director General of the NSO, the National Statistical Organization, which puts together the IIP. Dr. Sudipto Mundle, Chairman, Center for Development Studies, and formerly chaired a commission on real sector data, and fellow journalist Pramit Bhattacharya. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Well, collecting physical data has been a problem all these years, but we now seem to have a more ready and probably relatively clean data like the GST. So let me start there, Dr. Mundle. Do you think trawling the GST should be an easy task? It comes industry-wise, company-wise, sorting it should not be that big a problem. Is that a good point to start?
Yeah. First of all, this has been on the cards, ever since the GST, the platform was created. But between an idea and translating that idea into action, there are many steps required.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have been ready yet with the GSTN to make it available in a form that could be incorporated into something like the index of industrial product. It has to be done. That should be the goal. I'm not sure that we are ready to do it yet.
Okay.
That being said, I want to make a couple of observations, and if I'm wrong, I hope Dr. Manna will correct me.
Yeah.
But let's say the GST data, now that comes in, it doesn't, it comes in by enterprises.
Yes.
Some enterprises paying GST, so the tax is on that. It is not on a sector. So there's a translation or move, if you will, a mapping from units, enterprises to sectors. This has also been a problem, by the way, between the IIP and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs based data, which is again based on enterprises. These are business statistics. These are not industrial production statistics. But eventually you have to get there, but there are a lot of these hurdles which have to be cleared before we get there. And one other point I want to make is that the survey is, based on relatively large enterprises.
But Pramit, is it wise to throw the baby with the bathwater? I mean, not look at IIP data at all, as Dr. Mundle said, people are not taking it seriously, or is it a time to, pull it up by the bootstraps?
So regardless of whether you want to improve IIP or not, you will have to build a dynamic business register. It is required for it will help in improving IIP, of course, but more importantly, perhaps it will help in improving the national accounts. And if you see, there was a implicit sort of admission that even the National Accounts Division is not very happy with the IIP when they moved to the new cities, because one of the things that they did was to use listed firms' data for capturing manufacturing GVA instead of IIP for the first rounds, later replaced by the NCAER-21. And they said it was an improvement, which meant that they also knew that IIP was not easy to fix. And yes, ASI data, if it is used, and especially in a chain-based manner, with a larger sample, as Dr. Manna recommended, can help improve things. But the ASI frame itself has been questioned. And for the longest time, they have been saying that they're trying to map ASI and NCAER-21. Even that has been difficult. Yeah. So these problems remain. There are hurdles in making these databases talk to each other. But that has to happen. I mean, we need a business register where we know that this part is manufacturing, this part is services, even within an enterprise. And we have to find a way to map all these key economic databases. Only then we can actually utilize the value of these data sets efficiently. And this again, from the Underlying Commission till now, various committees have consistently emphasized that we need a dynamic business register. This project is ongoing.
The GSTN is more interested in getting the money, not allowing anyone to escape the network, rather than, the fine details that economists and statisticians want. But it is a pity that we know nothing from the GSTN. We don't even know how much is services and manufacturing. I mean, can even an elementary categorization not be done? So 2 questions to you. One, should we completely overhaul and look only at tax data as a source of capturing production data?
I think, yes, there is a necessity to look at the GSTN database, but whether that would really serve the purpose of IIP, as per the methodology what we are following now, I think that needs little re-examination. Okay. I think one needs to look at GSTN database carefully, whether this type of data is available. First point. Second, if GSTN database cannot be used because of its limitations as per the existing methodology, you see, the immediate solution should be probably, I mean, it may not be a fine solution, but I think we need to take remedial measures to improve our existing product, which is very, very important. And IIP numbers, the quarterly growth rates, etc., as you are aware, these are even being used in the compilation of quarterly GDP estimates, particularly for unorganized sector. Given the importance of the IIP as a short-term growth for industrial production, the existing limitations, which we are pretty familiar with, need to be, I mean, this to be safeguarded, and we need to take remedial measures.
Is it not possible to dynamically change the composition of the IIP, the number of products? I mean, do we have to wait for this 10-year program, and then after 10 years also it doesn't happen immediately? It takes a while before it kicks in. I can tell you something very simple. I don't think too many people are wearing saris these days. But I'm very sure in the textile category, saris will be taken into account, will be given a greater weight than perhaps jeans or, other attire for women. Can we have a more quicker change of the list of items which genuinely represent the country?
No, if we again and again change the item basket or factory, etc., the panel gets disturbed. And once you change the item list, year to year, where is the data with you? ASI data comes much later. So I think we have to probably live with the existing approach, but whatever limitations we have in terms of, say, number of observations under an item, etc. We need to increase the coverage. And of course, change in the weighting diagram and quite frequent base revision. Instead of 10 year, 12 years gap, I think if we could revise the base once in 5 years, which is the international recommendation, I think that would be to some extent solving some of the problems.
Okay, out of time, Dr. Mundle, last 10 seconds for you. How do we improve?
Yeah, let me just refer to something which has not been discussed. So quite apart from these technical issues we have been discussing, there is a governance issue. You know, you can fix a problem when you recognize that there's a problem. I must say, as an outsider, some engagement with MOSPI, that there is a tendency to, think that everything is fine. Internally, they all know what is the problem. And again, Dr. Manna is better positioned since he was a real insider. But unless you recognize that there's a problem that needs urgent fixing, you're not going to get there.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with him. We shouldn't do these overnight, simple solutions. You have to do it very carefully. But you first have to recognize that we need a problem that needs fixing. We have a problem that needs fixing. Let me stop there.
All right. Take your point. Pramit, we will await more articles from you flagging off the problems in the IIP and other data that we use. Thank you very much, Pramit, Dr. Mundle and Dr. Manna. There is a recognition of the problems, but perhaps not by the authorities who need to change. And we await whether the IIP can be brought back to shape, or will it continue to be abandoned as an important indicator of economic growth. Wrap up on this edition of Indianomics. Thank you for watching.